What if I told you that the fastest way to bring your blood sugar down has almost nothing to do with cutting carbohydrates out of your life, and everything to do with what you start adding to your plate? That single shift in thinking has changed everything for the patients I've worked with over the years. Not for a few weeks, not as some short-lived trick. I'm talking about people who brought their numbers down within days and then kept them down for months, sometimes years, without ever touching a new prescription. Today I'm going to walk you through 10 specific foods. Each one does a different job inside your body. Some slow down how fast sugar hits your bloodstream, some calm the inflammation that's quietly sabotaging you, and some go straight to the source and wake your insulin receptors back up. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly which ones to use, how much, and in what order to start. Here's something almost nobody explains to you in a rushed 10-minute appointment. High blood sugar very rarely starts with sugar itself. It starts with a hormone called insulin. Think of insulin as a key. Its job is to unlock the door of your cells so that glucose, the sugar sitting in your bloodstream, can move inside where it actually gets used for energy. When that system is working the way it should, your blood sugar stays calm and steady all day long. But after years of sugar spikes, processed meals, and constant grazing, something starts to change. The key still works, but the lock gets stiff. Your cells stop responding the way they used to. We call this insulin resistance, and it's the hidden root behind the vast majority of blood sugar problems people deal with after 50. Here's the frustrating part. When your cells stop listening to insulin, your pancreas doesn't just give up. It panics and pumps out even more insulin to try to force the door open. Your blood sugar keeps climbing anyway, and the typical next step is another prescription, which adds even more insulin into a system that's already overwhelmed with it. I'm not telling you that to scare you, and I'm definitely not telling you to throw away your medication. I'm telling you because there is a piece of this puzzle that food can solve in a way that pills were never designed to. Every single food on this list does one of three things. It slows sugar down before it floods your blood, it cools the inflammation that's jamming your insulin signal, or it helps your cells start responding to insulin again. You don't need to start all 10 tomorrow morning. Layer them in over the next couple of weeks, and let's get started with the first one. The first food is one that gets overlooked constantly: fenugreek seeds. They're small, hard, amber-colored seeds, and you'll usually find them sitting quietly in the spice aisle for just a couple of dollars. I had a patient, I'll call him Walter, who waved this one off the first time I mentioned it. "That sounds like something from a different decade," he told me. 3 weeks later, he was the one asking me why nobody had told him about it sooner. Here's what's actually happening inside fenugreek. It's rich in a soluble fiber called galactomannan. The moment it meets liquid in your stomach, it swells into a thick gel. That gel slows down how quickly carbohydrates move from your stomach into your small intestine. Instead of sugar flooding into your bloodstream all at once, it trickles in gradually. No flood means no panic spike of insulin from your pancreas. On top of that, fenugreek contains a specific amino acid that helps your pancreas release insulin more efficiently and encourages your muscles to actually take up the glucose that's floating around. To use it, take about a teaspoon of the whole seeds and let them soak overnight in a glass of water. In the morning, drink the water and eat the softened seeds before breakfast. If the taste is too bitter for your liking, grind them into a powder and stir half a teaspoon into yogurt or scrambled eggs instead. Start with a smaller amount. This fiber is strong, and your digestive system will need a few days to adjust to it. The second food is one you almost certainly already own: cinnamon. But here's the catch most people miss completely. The kind sitting in your cupboard right now is probably the wrong one. Most grocery store cinnamon is a variety called cassia, and it contains a compound called coumarin, which can be hard on your liver if you use it heavily every single day. The one you actually want is Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes labeled true cinnamon. It's gentler, safer for daily use, and it's the one I point my own patients toward. What makes it work are plant compounds called polyphenols. They behave almost like a mild version of insulin itself, helping your insulin receptors grip glucose more firmly while also slowing down how quickly your stomach empties after a meal. This isn't just a folk remedy. Researchers studying human nutrition found that even less than half a teaspoon a day made a measurable difference in fasting glucose for adults living with type 2 diabetes. Use about a quarter to a half teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon daily, stirred into oatmeal, coffee, or a smoothie. The key is timing. Pair it with a carbohydrate-containing meal, because that's exactly when you want your cells gripping harder and your stomach slowing down. Pay close attention to this third one because it's the single most underused food on this entire list. Broccoli sprouts. Not full-grown broccoli, the tiny 3-day-old sprouts. That distinction matters more than almost anything else I'll tell you today. These little sprouts are loaded with a compound called sulforaphane, and they contain somewhere between 50 and 100 times more of it than a mature head of broccoli. Here's what makes sulforaphane different from everything else on this list. It travels to your liver and quiets down what's essentially an overnight sugar factory. While you sleep, your liver naturally produces glucose. But in insulin resistance, it produces far too much, which is exactly why so many people wake up with a fasting number that makes no sense given they haven't eaten anything in 8 hours. A study out of a major Swedish research university gave concentrated sulforaphane to people with type 2 diabetes and saw their fasting blood sugar drop measurably, with the strongest results showing up in the people whose numbers had been hardest to control. You can grow these on your own kitchen counter in a simple jar for pennies, or pick them up in the produce section of most grocery stores. A small handful, about a quarter cup, on a salad or sandwich most days is enough. Just don't cook them hard. High heat destroys the active compound, so eat them raw or barely wilted. If someone you love is fighting their own numbers right now, this is exactly the kind of video worth sending them, because it's the part nobody sits them down and explains. And before we go any further, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. I genuinely read through them, and it shapes what I cover in future videos. If this is helping you make sense of your own numbers, a quick like helps more people find this information too. Now let's keep going, because the next few foods are the ones that are probably already sitting in your kitchen. Most people quietly avoid avocado because they're afraid of the calories sitting inside it. That fear is actually working against them. The fat in an avocado is monounsaturated fat, the same family found in olive oil, and it happens to be one of the most blood sugar-friendly fats you can put on your plate. When you add half an avocado next to a serving of rice or toast, you're not removing the carbohydrate. You're putting a gentle brake on how quickly it turns into blood sugar. The rise becomes gradual instead of sharp. Over time, this same fat has also been shown to improve how sensitive your cells are to insulin in the first place. I had a patient named Joyce who hadn't touched an avocado in over a decade because a doctor decades earlier told her fat was the enemy. Once she started adding half of one to her breakfast, her mid-morning energy crashes, and the snacking that came with them, disappeared almost entirely. Half an avocado a day is a reasonable target. Mash it onto whole grain toast, fold it into eggs, or add it to a salad that already has some starch sitting in it. Wherever you have a carbohydrate on your plate, an avocado softens its impact. Fifth is chia seeds, tiny, gray, and black, and they punch far above their size. If you've ever watched chia sit in liquid and slowly turn into a pudding, you've already seen exactly how it behaves inside your stomach. Chia is one of the richest sources of soluble fiber available, and when it meets water, it forms that same thick gel we talked about with fenugreek. That gel wraps around the carbohydrates in your meal and slows their absorption dramatically. Sugar releases gradually instead of all at once, which means you skip both the spike and the shaky, hungry crash that tends to follow about an hour later. Chia also carries a plant-based omega-3 fat that helps calm the low-grade inflammation sitting underneath insulin resistance. And calming that inflammation is part of how your cells start listening to insulin again. 1 to 2 tablespoons a day is plenty. Stir it into yogurt, drop it into a glass of water with a little lemon, or blend it into a smoothie. Give it about 10 minutes to gel before drinking it, and make sure you're getting enough water alongside it, since all that fiber needs liquid to move comfortably through your system. Number 6 works differently from everything we've covered so far. Fatty fish, specifically salmon and mackerel. This one doesn't slow your meal down. It goes after the actual reason your cells stopped responding to insulin in the first place. Chronic, low-grade inflammation. When your body stays quietly inflamed year after year, that inflammation physically interferes with the insulin signal right at the surface of the cell. Salmon and mackerel are rich in two specific omega-3 fats, EPA and DHA, which are among the most powerful natural anti-inflammatory compounds we know of. As that inflammation cools, the cell membrane becomes healthier and the insulin receptor starts doing the job it was built for. Over the years, I've consistently noticed that patients who eat fatty fish twice a week tend to have calmer, steadier numbers and better blood pressure readings to go along with them. Aim for 2 servings a week, roughly the size of your palm each. Wild salmon, mackerel, sardines, and herring all work well, and if fresh fish stretches your budget, canned mackerel and sardines are some of the most affordable, nutrient-dense options on this entire list. Of all the nuts available, walnuts are the one I steer my patients toward first because of what they do for both your blood vessels and your insulin at the same time. Walnuts are rich in polyunsaturated fat and that same plant-based omega-3 found in chia seeds. That fat strengthens the function of your endothelium, the delicate lining inside your blood vessels, which happens to be one of the very first things damaged by chronically high blood sugar. At the same time, the combination of fat, fiber, and protein in walnuts blunts the rise in blood sugar after meals and has been shown to lower fasting insulin, the number underneath your blood sugar that reveals just how hard your pancreas is straining to keep up. A small handful, about a quarter cup, or roughly 7 to 10 whole walnuts, makes an excellent replacement for crackers or a cookie. Keep them raw or dry roasted rather than candied or honey-coated, and use them to replace a processed snack rather than adding them on top of one. Section Food 8. Whole eggs. Number 8 might surprise some of you. Whole eggs, yolk included. For years, people were warned away from the yolk, and that advice quietly pushed an entire generation towards sugary breakfast cereals that were genuinely worse for their blood sugar. Let's set the record straight. A whole egg is almost pure protein and fat, with virtually no carbohydrate, which means, on its own, it barely moves your blood sugar at all. But the real benefit is something doctors call the second meal effect. When you start your morning with eggs instead of toast or cereal, your blood sugar stays steadier not just through breakfast, but all the way to lunch. You arrive at your next meal calmer, with a smaller spike waiting for you. The protein and fat also keep you fuller for longer, which means the mid-morning craving that usually sends you towards something sweet tends to fade away on its own. 2 or 3 whole eggs in the morning is a solid target for most people. Scramble them, boil a batch ahead for the week, or fold in a handful of spinach. Add the avocado we talked about earlier, and you've built one of the most balanced breakfasts available for steady blood sugar. This next one might be the fastest, most visible effect of anything on this list. Apple cider vinegar. If you happen to have a glucose meter at home, this is one you can genuinely watch work in real time tonight. The active ingredient is acetic acid, and it does 2 things simultaneously. It slows down how quickly your stomach empties, so carbohydrates arrive in your bloodstream more gradually, and it helps your muscles pull glucose out of your blood to use as fuel. Research conducted at a major U.S. university found that a tablespoon of vinegar taken before a carbohydrate-containing meal lowered the after-meal blood sugar spike by roughly 20% in people with insulin resistance. A drug-sized effect from something that costs only a few dollars a bottle. Take 1 tablespoon, dilute it in a full glass of water 10 to 15 minutes before a meal that contains carbohydrates. Always dilute it, never drink it straight, since the acid can be harsh on tooth enamel and your throat. And if you're already taking any blood sugar medication, talk with your doctor first, because vinegar combined with certain medications can lower your sugar faster than you'd expect. The 10th and final food might be the one that proves this entire video's point: lentils. Because lentils are, in fact, a carbohydrate, and they will still lower your blood sugar. Here's how that's possible. Lentils are built around a slow-digesting starch wrapped in soluble fiber, alongside a healthy dose of plant protein. That combination means the glucose inside a lentil releases into your blood slowly and steadily over hours rather than all at once. And they carry that same second meal effect we talked about with eggs. A bowl of lentil soup at lunch keeps your sugar steadier well into the evening. Swapping white rice or potatoes for lentils a few times a week is one of the most reliable strategies I know for bringing down an A1C, your 3-month average blood sugar reading. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Patricia. She was 65, recently retired, and came to see me frightened. Her fasting sugar was sitting around 180, and her own doctor had just told her it was time to add a second medication. She didn't want to spend the rest of her life climbing that ladder, especially after watching her own mother lose her eyesight to the same disease. We didn't strip her diet down to nothing. We added eggs and avocado at breakfast instead of cereal, a tablespoon of diluted vinegar before her larger meals, lentils in place of white rice, walnuts instead of her afternoon cookie, fatty fish twice a week, cinnamon stirred into her coffee, and broccoli sprouts folded into her lunchtime sandwich. Within the first week, her fasting numbers were already trending down. Within 3 months, working closely alongside her own physician, she had come off that second medication entirely, and her A1C had moved out of the diabetic range. 2 years later, it has stayed there. She didn't starve herself. She simply ate more of the right things, and her own body did the rest. Half a cup to a full cup of cooked lentils, a few times a week, is a reasonable target. Use them in a soup, a stew, or a cold salad with a little olive oil and a splash of that vinegar we just discussed. They're filling, inexpensive, and they stretch a meal further than almost anything else on this list. Here's why all 10 of these work when simply cutting carbohydrates alone so often fails. Every single one of them hands your insulin its job back without ever leaving you hungry. The fiber-rich foods, fenugreek, chia, lentils, slow glucose down so your pancreas never has to panic. The fish, the walnuts, and the chia cool the inflammation that was jamming the signal in the first place. The cinnamon and the vinegar walk right up to the insulin receptor and help it grip glucose again. Do that, meal after meal, day after day, and the cell that stopped answering the door slowly starts opening it again, on the very first knock. That, at a cellular level, is what reversing insulin resistance actually looks like. And once it happens, your body holds your sugar down largely on its own, which is exactly why Patricia's numbers stayed steady for 2 full years and counting. Before I give you tonight's plan, I need to draw one important line. If you're currently taking insulin or one of the older blood sugar medications called sulfonylureas, these foods can lower your sugar quickly enough that your existing dose may suddenly become too strong, which can push you into a dangerous low. So bring this list to your doctor and let them adjust your medication alongside you as your numbers improve. Please don't stop or change any prescription on your own. This works best as a partnership with the physician who already knows your full history. So here's exactly what to do tonight, in 5 simple steps. 1. Tomorrow morning, replace your usual cereal or toast with 2 or 3 whole eggs and half an avocado. That single swap changes the trajectory of your entire day. 2. Tonight, soak a teaspoon of fenugreek seeds in a glass of water and drink it first thing in the morning. 3. Pick up Ceylon cinnamon, not cassia, and start with a 1/4 teaspoon a day stirred into your coffee or oatmeal. 4. Before tomorrow's biggest carbohydrate meal, take a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar diluted in a full glass of water about 15 minutes ahead of time. 5. This week, swap white rice or potatoes for lentils at least twice, and put fatty fish on the menu for 2 nights. Stack these in gradually over the next 2 weeks. You're not stripping away the foods you love, you're adding in the foods that protect you. Have you noticed any of these patterns in your own numbers? A high fasting reading, an afternoon crash, a craving you couldn't quite explain? I'd genuinely like to know, so tell me in the comments. There's actually one strange pattern a huge number of you have brought up. Your highest blood sugar reading of the entire day showing up first thing in the morning before you've eaten a single bite. Your liver has a specific reason for doing that overnight, and there's a way to calm it down. I've made a separate video walking through exactly what's happening while you sleep and how to wake up to a steadier number. I'll leave it right on the screen, so go watch that one next. If this video helped bring some clarity to what's actually been happening inside your body, do me a favor and subscribe, so future videos like this one find you. My name is Dr. Josephine, and this is Dr. Josephine, where we believe understanding the why behind your health is just as important as the advice itself. I'll see you in the next one.